and you're getting easier matchups by way of their lack of depth, and that's why a team that's won, they're winless in their last 10. That said, it did remind me of last year, which was roughly around this time. It was a little bit earlier, but basically the Leafs were in the exact same situation where they weren't getting anything from their bottom six, and they put together this sort of makeshift at the time Robertson, Domi, Yarncroc line. I'm sure you remember it. They weren't anything crazy, but they won their minutes. They won them like 12-8 at 5-on-5. Nothing to write home about. Obviously, it wasn't the line as the season went along, but there was a point mid-season where they gave the Leafs what they needed in terms of a third line that could legitimately do something. Like, you have to be good at something one way or the other. Either you're really good defensively and you open the game up for Matthews and Marner, or you chip in offensively and get the odd goal, which is what I think this line is now with McMahon in place of Yarncroc. So I think there's something there where you can look and say that's a line that can chip in some offense and get them the odd goal. And, the reality is, it kind of funny because I was thinking about it when you were talking about, guys talk about can players fit in Berube's system and so on and so forth. And I've seen that come up as well, that thought of, oh, well, the top guys just aren't getting it. And I'm like, why not? Marner is having a career year, like he's pacing to have a career year points-wise. Nylander is pacing to score career high in goals. Matthews has been hurt. Tavares is having a great year. Like, he looks much better than he did last season, right? Like, the top guys have been just fine. Nyes is breaking out. Pacioretty's been a good fit. Like, what's the issue been? It's like none of these guys, no one else has done anything.
Yeah, it's a totally made up argument. I've heard it many times too, and I'm always like, where? Like, what exactly is it? And the other part that is, it's the other guys haven't done anything, but it's also that they have not been particularly great on the power play. And so that exasperates it because you're like, okay, these guys are supposed to kind of impose. And when you're a low-scoring hockey team, right, like you're not just taking advantage of teams 5-on-5 and you're grinding them out. I think there's supposed to be an implication with these guys that when you get the power play, you're supposed to cave teams in and make it feel like they're sick to their stomachs, knowing that they just changed the course of the game.
Yeah. The power play just has been a huge problem. So, I think in saying all that, I think there's enough there. I know, I heard you talking about Bobby McMahon before I hopped on.
That's the big thing to me.
Like he's a player, right? Yep. That Yarncroc, Domi, Robertson line was decent last year for what they needed it to be. I can't fathom that, swapping Yarncroc for McMahon is going to make it worse.
No, I really, the kind of where I was going with that take is, I think that the real difference, and God, you really shouldn't be relying on an injury-prone guy this much down your life, but it's like, it does show you that if you hit on a talented player on a cheap contract, what it can do for this team. It's been the story with Nyes. It's been the story with Pacioretty to a certain degree, where it's like, oh, right, this guy's a professional. He's able to do things that some of the other AHL stuck between guys that they've brought up here in past iterations has not been able to do, which is like, okay, yeah, like he gets an opportunity in the front of the net, he's going to be able to bury it. All right, he's going to get an opportunity to hit somebody, he's going to hit somebody. He's a pro. Like, he walks, talks, acts like a pro and plays like a older pro. But McMahon, to me, is actually really fascinating because yesterday was I think out of the first time that I can remember anyways, where he was down the lineup and it felt like he was really like an imposing figure in the game. And you said it, that it's the Sabres, so I'm being patient with it, but he's just looked really good all season long. And it's been now with multiple different sets of players. I'm very curious to kind of see how his season plays out. And yes, of course, if he can stay healthy, but if he does stay healthy, what exactly a full season of him looks like.
Yeah, and I think Domi's a good fit for him. I know we've seen McMahon move up the lineup with Matthews and Marner for like the very odd look. And I think he looks pretty good with Nylander because Nylander just dominates the puck so much, and then he'll just dish it on occasion. And McMahon has a really good shot, and, his speed helps create turnovers on the forecheck and these sorts of things. But I think the fit is a bit awkward with Matthews and Marner because McMahon's not really like a playmaker. Like, he's not going to move the puck with those guys.
And he doesn't hit.
Right? Yeah. So like that combo is a little bit strange, but I think with Domi, it works quite well because Domi does like the puck on his stick, and Domi is going to pass 9 times out of 10, maybe even the full 10, maybe even 11 out of 10. So, having McMahon as a trigger man around him makes sense. Having McMahon as a bit of more of a defensive conscious and someone who can just get the puck out of their zone when that's required on that side of things makes sense. And also just the size of having that forechecker and, a little bit of a different element than Järnkrok, where McMahon doesn't necessarily need to look for space. He can just create it himself. So that works. And then we've kind of seen it with as McMahon will be the bigger story, I think, for the overall picture of their season, because I think they do need to get something from him in the playoffs, just as that, another big power forward type left winger in their group. But I think how viable that line is for the time being is probably going to go back to Robertson. They need to get something from him, right? He needs to, if he's contributing every, couple games, the way, I don't want to say the way he did last year, because it wasn't, because he was constantly getting scratched in and out of that. But, if he could just do that consistently, then you probably have a third scoring line. If it's, Robertson's about to not get a point again for 11 games, you're going to have a problem with that third line. And it's not been for a lack of chances on his end. He's had tons of chances, and they just haven't gone in. So maybe he's due, or maybe that's just reality catching up to him. I don't know.
I'm already decided on it. I can't do it anymore, especially given the amount of opportunities that have taken place and the length in which he's been allowed to struggle, especially this year. It's like the guy in a tough physical matchup against a hard team is not going to be able to stay on his skates. He fumbles too many pucks. And as nice as the shot is, he's not an elite enough finisher to justify the other warts to the game. And for this team, right now in this very stretch of play where they're searching for for goal scoring, great. You want to get more from him. But come deadline time, come when this team is trying to make their additions and move forward, you can't come out of the trade deadline and have Nick Robertson in your lineup. Not even as a guy who's essentially rotating in. You got to have other pieces there that are ensuring that is not what you're doing moving forward here. He's not a fit. He's had his run. Every once in a while, he's going to pop, and you're going to go, wow, because he does a lot. He's little short bursts, and when he has his moments, he looks great. But overall, the body of work is pretty conclusive for me, and it really doesn't need to – there really doesn't need to be more referendums every single time he puts one of these together, which is, again, once now every 12 to 13 games.
Yeah, I think I mean, they're going to add forward. I think that's –
I think they're going to need to add clear.
Too. Yeah, I agree, right? So they're going to have to add, they're going to definitely add at least one.
Yep.
I would probably try to add two, depending on how you can swing it, and all that comes with that. But in the meantime of that line being viable, it's probably only going to be viable if he's able to chip in and, Domi and McMahon are pretty good players, but they can't play with a guy who's going to do nothing.
Yeah.
And we can't expect much out of them. And that, it's like, if you swap him for Pontus Holmberg, it's like, okay, another guy who could go pointless in 20 games without, with time stand still.
Yeah.
The Leafs center dilemma: who can strengthen the roster? If you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan like me, you know the team's center depth has been a constant concern this season. With Auston Matthews set to return from a mysterious upper body injury next week, the excitement of having our star back is palpable. However, there are still serious issues to address in the center position to keep the team competitive and, of course, fuel our playoff dreams. David Kampf, a key piece in the center rotation, is sidelined with a lower body injury. As if that weren't enough, Kalle Järnkrok is still recovering from surgery, leaving another gap in the lineup. Max Domi, expected to be a versatile asset, has been placed on injured reserve, further aggravating the situation after missing consecutive practices due to lingering pains. To sum it up, the Leafs are missing 4 functional centers, and the pressure to act is mounting. James Mirtle, a respected Leafs analyst and contributor to The Athletic, highlighted a series of potential trade targets to address this dilemma during his appearance on the J.D. Bunke's podcast. Among the names mentioned, 2 stood out: Nick Jugstad and, for the nostalgic fans, a possible reunion with Ryan O'Reilly. Jugstad seems to be Mirtle's favorite, and for good reason. The player, who signed a 2-year deal with the Utah Hockey Club last offseason, carries a manageable $2.1 million cap hit, which is essential for a team as salary cap-strapped as the Leafs. Additionally, standing at 6 feet 6 inches and weighing 205 pounds, he would bring not only physicality but also consistent offensive contributions. Jugstad is the most viable option for the Leafs right now, Myrtle stated on the podcast. And he's right. Experienced and versatile, Jugstad has played for several teams, including the Florida Panthers, Pittsburgh Penguins, Minnesota Wild, and Edmonton Oilers, and could quickly adapt to the Leafs' dynamic. With an affordable contract and a solid track record, he offers a practical solution without sacrificing too many future assets. However, it's impossible to ignore the possibility of a Ryan O'Reilly return. Yes, we know he chose the Nashville Predators last summer in search of a quieter environment, but the Leafs management still holds him in high regard. The 2019 Stanley Cup winning captain with the St. Louis Blues is precisely the type of player any contender would love to have on their roster. However, the cost of bringing him back would be steep, both in terms of trade assets and cap space adjustments, as Nashville or a third team would need to retain part of his salary. I don't think the O'Reilly scenario is entirely out of reach, Myrtle said, showing that there's optimism within the organization. However, there are doubts about how much it's worth investing in a 33-year-old player, even with his impeccable credentials. Meanwhile, cheaper internal options like Steven Lorentz, Connor Dewar, Pontus Holmberg, and Fraser Minten have been mentioned. But let's be honest, these names might serve as short-term stopgaps, but they're far from offering the stability and impact the team needs. The pressure is all on GM Brad Treliving. He knows that despite the Leafs' solid performance so far, the center position is crucial to sustaining any championship aspirations. With the trade deadline approaching, Treliving has likely intensified his efforts to finalize a deal. And we, the fans, are eagerly awaiting good news. For now, all we can do is trust that the team can weather this tough phase and hope a solution, whether it's Jugstad, O'Reilly, or another name, arrives before things spiral out of control. After all, as we all know, the Leafs don't have the luxury of wasting another season with a promising but incomplete roster. The time to act is now. The Leafs center dilemma, expanding on the potential solutions. The Toronto Maple Leafs, amidst another promising yet tumultuous season, face one of their most pressing challenges, addressing a depleted center lineup that threatens to derail their momentum. While the return of Auston Matthews is a beacon of hope, the broader picture remains dire, requiring urgent action from the front office. With Kampf, Jarnkrok, and Domi sidelined, the team's depth has been stretched thin. The immediate impact is clear on both ends of the ice. Defensively, the Leafs are struggling to suppress opposing top lines without reliable two-way centers. Offensively, puck distribution and power play setups have been less dynamic, as the makeshift lineups lack the same chemistry. This imbalance underscores the necessity for reinforcements. Nick Jugstad, as highlighted by James Myrtle, presents the most realistic trade option. His affordable contract and towering physical presence align perfectly with the Leafs' needs. Beyond his imposing stature, Jugstad brings versatility. He can play both center and wing, a flexibility that would allow head coach Sheldon Keefe to adjust the lineup dynamically. However, acquiring Jugstad isn't without complications. The Utah Hockey Club, formerly the Arizona Coyotes, is currently rebuilding but may still demand a premium return for their experienced forward. The Leafs will likely need to part with a mid-tier prospect or draft pick to make the deal work. With their prospect pool already thin, Treliving faces a tough decision. Another name that excites fans and analysts alike is Ryan O'Reilly. The former Conn Smythe winner and Stanley Cup champion has a proven track record of elevating teams in high-stakes situations. His leadership during his brief stint with Toronto last season left a lasting impression. Yet, the Predators have little incentive to move him unless the offer is overwhelming. Should the Leafs pursue O'Reilly, it would almost certainly require a multi-asset package. A first-round pick and a promising young player like Nick Robertson might need to be part of the conversation. Additionally, Nashville would have to retain salary, a process that often involves a third-party team to facilitate. The logistics are challenging but not insurmountable. Internal options like Pontus Holmberg and Fraser Minten offer short-term relief but lack the experience needed for a deep playoff run. Holmberg has shown flashes of potential, but his limited NHL exposure raises questions about his readiness for a consistent role. Minten, while promising, is still developing and would be better served continuing his growth in the minors. A wild-card option could be exploring European leagues or waiver claims to unearth an overlooked talent. Teams like the Vegas Golden Knights and Colorado Avalanche have found gems in unconventional ways, and the Leafs scouting department may need to cast a wider net to uncover an affordable, immediate solution. Another factor complicating the Leafs' decisions is the looming salary cap crunch. With Matthews' extension set to kick in soon, Toronto must be mindful of every financial commitment. Adding a high-priced center now could limit flexibility during the off-season, forcing Treliving to juggle short-term needs against long-term sustainability. Trade timing will also play a pivotal role. Acting quickly could stabilize the team and prevent further slip-ups in the standings, but it may come at the cost of negotiating leverage. Alternatively, waiting closer to the deadline could yield better deals as selling teams grow more desperate. The risk, however, is enduring several more weeks of uncertainty. Sheldon Keefe's role in navigating this storm can't be overstated. His ability to extract maximum effort from an injury-riddled lineup will be crucial. Keefe has already experimented with unconventional line combinations, but the lack of true centers limits his tactical options. A new acquisition would provide the stability he needs to implement a more structured game plan. The Leafs locker room has remained resilient through adversity, with veterans like John Tavares and Morgan Rielly stepping up as vocal leaders. However, even their efforts may not be enough to overcome the absence of key personnel. Reinforcements are not just a luxury, they're a necessity. For fans, the anxiety is palpable. After years of playoff heartbreak, this season feels like another chapter in the saga of unmet expectations. Yet, there's cautious optimism. The team has shown glimpses of brilliance, and the addition of a solid center could be the missing piece that transforms them from contenders to genuine threats. As the trade rumors swirl, one thing is certain: the next few weeks will be critical in shaping the Leafs season. Whether it's Bjugstad, O'Reilly, or an unexpected name, the decision made by Brad Treliving and his staff could define not just this campaign, but the team's trajectory for years to come. For now, we wait, hopeful that the Leafs will seize the moment and finally deliver on their immense potential. Will the Leafs make their move? As the speculation intensifies, the Leafs fan base is holding its collective breath, waiting for signs of a breakthrough.